is going on? Welcome to week number 7 already of our program, Be Kind to Your Mind. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, keep sending them to me. Go to mindfulmike.ca, hit contact Mike, or DM me at mindfulmassey, M-A-S-S-E. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about your practice or about any of these videos, or if you want to ask me a question that has nothing to do with these videos, but about your practice of self-care or about your practice of mindfulness, again, never hesitate to reach out. Even when this video series is done, maybe I know some of you are watching it later, you're not you're not watching it every Wednesday when it's released. Maybe you're a week or 2 weeks, some of you maybe 4 weeks behind. If you have questions and the video series is done, I will still answer your questions. Just say what group you're from, and I'm happy to help out in any way that I can. So moving forward this week, we're looking at what I believe is one of the most important practices. It's one of the practices that changed my life, which is the practice of self-compassion. And what I want you to think about this week is I want you to think about the idea that you're training your mind to be kind. Remember, be kind to your mind. We're training our mind to be kind to ourselves. We're training our mind over this series. We're training our mind to respond to our stresses. Why? So we can talk to ourselves in a healthier way. When we have those negative thoughts, those judgments about what might happen or may happen or could happen, we can talk to ourselves like we're talking to a loved one if they were incurring the same stress. When you're incurring anger or frustration, how would you talk to a friend in that same situation? That's one of the benefits, one of the many benefits of mindfulness. It's, for me, one of the things that helped change my life when I learned to talk to myself as if I'm talking to someone that I love. Because I found often I'm really nice to strangers, very, very outgoing and nice to strangers, but I found that I wasn't nearly as nice to myself. And I thought, well, that's not really a fair deal. If I'm nice to a random person at Walmart or Zehrs or wherever I go in my life, or people in the audience when I talk to them, I think I'm fairly nice. And then I get home and not as nice, or get in my car and think, well, that was stupid. You said that thing. That was an idiot. Would I say that to a friend of mine or a business partner? Of course not. But when I started to train my brain to be nice to myself, I started to first realize how mean I was to myself and how full of judgments that my thoughts and deeds and words were. So we're not going to obviously change this in a week, but we're going to plant the seed of self-compassion. And let me give you 2 stories about how self-compassion has helped me. And I believe I shared maybe one of those with you when I was last time we chatted. But when I believe that's what self-compassion can do is it can train your brain to talk to yourself as if you're talking to a really good friend or a partner or a family member. And I was doing this fairly what I call the mindfulness roadshow, where I'm on the road for about 4 days straight. I'm doing anywhere from 10 to 15 talks a day. They're really long days. I'm on the road. I was home for half a day, and then I went again on the road for another 3 days. So out of this entire week, I was really only home for maybe even half a day. I didn't even see my wife because we were what do they say? Passing ships in the night. I think that's it. I saw my kids for a little bit, but then I hit the road. And on that drive, I was pretty bummed out. I felt kind of sad. And then my initial response was, well, you would have killed to be this busy 5 years ago. And I didn't take anything else in consideration. Just that I was on the road. I was sad. I would really miss my family. I didn't really get to see them. I didn't see my wife at all in a week, which is very rare. And I actually like hanging out with my wife. She's, super fun human. And, my kids, I saw them for half a day and I just felt sad about it. But my initial thing was to tell myself to shut up and to suck it up because hey, you're on the road. You've been crazy. You would have been killed to be this busy X amount of years ago. You're getting paid really well this week, blah, 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 blah. And that was supposed to make myself feel better. And I thought, let's press pause on this one because it didn't make me feel better. I felt worse about the situation. And I thought if my wife, Jen, was in the car next to me and she was like, hey, honey, I haven't seen you in a week. I've only seen the kids for 3 or 4 hours in a week. I'm really kind of sad about this and I miss you guys. I would not say, hey, you should shut up and you should be thankful that you're this busy. I would say, hey, that's great. You miss us. That's a good thing, I think. That's understandable. And that must be hard for you. That's exactly or something like that I would say to my wife. I wouldn't shame her for being busy and I wouldn't shame her for making money and say, well, your feelings don't matter. I would say all of that matters. And that's a hard situation for you to be in. See, that's the power of mindfulness. When we can train our brain to talk to ourselves like we're talking to someone that we love and not make the situation worse. Because typically what I would do is I would go in my mind and compare myself to other people, to my friends, or I would compare myself unfairly to other people, and I would judge myself and tell myself to shut up and suck it up and just move on. And then I'm driving for the next 2 hours feeling angry or frustrated and my feelings don't matter. And that's not the case. I'm allowed to experience whatever I'm experiencing, but I'm allowed to do that and to hold myself as if I would hold someone that I love. And doing that has totally changed my life. A deeper, more intense way of looking at it is when one of my best friends, Scott, died almost 4 years ago. And he died at a young age of in his mid-30s, 35, I believe. And when he was sick in the ICU, I spent a lot of days in the ICU with him. And I was always thinking about, wow, this must be so hard for his wife. This must be so hard for his kids. And I was comparing their suffering to my suffering. And then I thought, well, that's not really fair. There's always going to be people who are suffering more than you. So you're always going to lose this game, especially in this contest. But I'm like, why do I always put myself in this weird contest where I'm comparing my loss to someone else's loss, even if it's the same human? And I'm like, well, my loss is like, I'm just losing one of my best friends. She's losing her husband. They're losing their father. My wife is still okay. I would do these weird comparisons. I thought, stop. If this was your wife again and she was losing one of her best friends, you would hold her and you would be kind to her and you would say, that must be really hard for you. And that's exactly what I did to myself. I held myself and said, this is really hard for me right now. This is really heavy for me to lose someone in this way at this age. This sucks. And to be able to talk to myself like that was a game changer. Now, it wasn't just the words, is that I had the practice to back it up. So if you try this practice, all we first do, the practice of self-compassion, you just press play. And what we do is we think of someone who we love, what we typically say, who's easy to love. So I think of one of my kids or my wife, and I think about their suffering. And as soon as I think about their suffering, I notice that my heart reacts and reaches out to them. That's compassion. And you notice that compassion, and you sit with that compassion, and you hold your loved one in compassion and wish them well. And then we do the exact same thing for ourselves. We think of ourselves and we think of a way that we're suffering, and then we hold ourselves as if we're holding a loved one. I usually imagine my boys, because it's really easy. They look like mini-me's. It's really easy to imagine if they were experiencing suffering, how would I hold them? I've been with my wife forever, so I can often think, okay, if she's in that situation, how could I hold her? Or I'll think of a younger version of myself. But I typically find that thinking of my boys is the way that I do it, and it helps me. But you can think of, especially when you're dealing with yourself, it can be really awkward to kind of hold yourself and think of yourself as someone that you love. It's just awkward for people. So again, I say just fake it till you make it, right? I did this practice for months and eventually just kind of clicked in and something changed. And now it's like one of my go-to practices is actually talk to myself quite a bit. And saying, I care for myself, or I do love myself. And I find that when you do this practice over and over again, it comes out in really kind of cool, ridiculous ways. Like I was working on my Be Present posters. That's some of you are aware of, where, using with my artist, Emily, and we're creating this content for children and youth. And so they can use mindfulness in a couple different ways. And I was writing up something, and out loud, I said, oh, sorry. And my artist looked at me and said, sorry about what? And I was like, I said that out loud. I often talk to myself out loud because I'm so used to talking to the camera by myself. So I said to her, oh, sorry, that was, sorry. Again, that's such a Canadian thing to say. I was like, that wasn't for you. I actually said sorry to me. And then she looked at me puzzled, huh? Why are you saying sorry to yourself? I was like, well, I screwed up on this thing that I'm working on. I called myself an idiot in my head, but then I said sorry, and I said it out loud. And then she laughed. And the next week, her and I were actually teaching a group of correctional officers, probation officers, this 10-week group we're doing. And I told them that story, and they all were like, whoa. My artist, Emily, was laughing. And one of the women in the group said, you can say sorry to yourself? And I'm like, I know you can. But that was honestly this natural experience that came from a regular practice of self-compassion. So this week, that's your only practice, is practice self-compassion. I would recommend that you practice it at least 3 to 5 times this week. Just to rep it out. You're going to resist it. And again, it's okay. If it brings up emotions, that's okay, right? If you really resist it, lean into it and do it more. I say to people all the time, if you really resist the practice, lean into it and do it more. If it doesn't resonate with you, then don't do it. But I highly recommend that you try this practice out. And all we're doing that week is self-compassion. Why? So we can be kind to our mind. So thank you so much again for all that you all do. Keep reaching out if you have any questions, comments, concerns. You know where to hit me up by now. Go to mindfulmike.ca. Hit contact Mike, or DM me directly at mindfulmasse, MASSE. Have a beautiful week. Press play on that self-compassion, and let's learn how to be kind to our mind and to hold ourselves as if we're holding someone that we love. Peace and love, and bye for now.